The night sky was ablaze, lit by the roaring flames consuming Brenda and James's house. I stood there watching as the fire devoured everything, feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction. This was my revenge. This was justice for the betrayal. It all began a few years ago at a friend's party, where I met Brenda. She was stunning, with a smile that could light up a room. It didn't take long for us to fall in love, get married, and build a life filled with dreams and happiness. James, my best friend since college, had been a brother to me. We'd been through thick and thin together, always having each other's backs. So when Brenda started acting strangely, disappearing for hours, whispering on phone calls, I couldn't believe what I eventually discovered. One night, unable to shake the gnawing suspicion, I decided to follow her. I trailed her to a hotel and, through the window, saw them together. Brenda and James locked in an embrace, kissing passionately. My world shattered in an instant. Confronting Brenda that evening was a scene I'll never forget. Her confession was like a dagger to my heart. She admitted to the affair, saying she no longer loved me. It was a death sentence for our marriage, and for the friendship I had treasured. I couldn't just walk away. The betrayal by the two people I trusted most ignited a fire within me, a fire that demanded retribution. I began to plot my revenge, meticulously gathering everything I needed: gasoline, rags, lighters. The rage fueled me, pushing me towards the inevitable. James's house was the first target. I made sure they were both inside, then set it ablaze. As I watched the Inferno rise, I felt a dark, grim satisfaction. This was a cleansing, a purge of the pain they had inflicted on me. Next was my own home. I couldn't bear to live in a place stained with lies and betrayal. I set it on fire, erasing the remnants of a life that was no more. With both houses burning, I fled the city, leaving behind the ashes of my past. My new life began amidst the ruins of the old one. Months have passed, and while the pain remains, I'm learning to live with the consequences of my actions. Maybe one day, I'll find peace. A few years back, life was perfect. Brenda and I had quickly fallen in love after meeting at that party, and our wedding had been a beautiful, joyful event. We spent our days planning for the future, dreaming about starting a family, and building a life together in our cozy suburban home. James, my best friend, was a constant presence in our lives. We'd met in college, forming an unbreakable bond over late-night study sessions and shared ambitions. He was more than just a friend, he was family. Brenda and I often had him over for dinners, and he even helped us with home projects. I trusted him implicitly, never suspecting that the very people closest to me could betray me so profoundly. The first sign of trouble came subtly. Brenda started coming home later than usual, with vague excuses about work or errands. At first, I dismissed my concerns, chalking them up to paranoia. But the frequency of her absences increased, and her explanations grew less convincing. There were hushed phone calls, hurriedly ended when I entered the room, and an undeniable distance that began to grow between us. One evening, after another one of Brenda's mysterious disappearances, I decided to confront her gently. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "You've been acting different lately." She laughed it off, calling me silly and paranoid. "Just a lot on my mind," she said, flashing that disarming smile. "Work has been stressful." I wanted to believe her, desperately clinging to the idea of our perfect life. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it took root deep within me. I found myself watching her more closely, noticing the small things that didn't add up. The way she glanced at her phone, the nervous energy that seemed to surround her. The breaking point came on a rainy Wednesday night. Brenda had gone out again, and as I sat alone in our living room, a gnawing anxiety twisted in my gut. I decided to follow her, to finally get to the bottom of whatever was going on. I slipped out of the house, trailing her car through the dark, slick streets. She drove to a hotel on the outskirts of town. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched her meet James in the lobby. They embraced, holding each other close before heading to a room. The sight of them together, so intimate and familiar, was like a knife to my heart. I felt my world collapse around me. Everything I had believed in, everything I had cherished, was built on lies. The woman I loved and the friend I trusted had betrayed me in the worst possible way. That night, when Brenda returned home, I was waiting. The confrontation was brutal. She confessed to the affair, her words cutting deep. "I don't love you anymore," she said. tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, but it's over." In the aftermath of her confession, I felt lost and numb. But beneath the pain and sorrow, a dark rage began to grow. I couldn't let them get away with what they had done. They had destroyed my life, and I wanted them to feel the same anguish. As the days passed, my thoughts turned increasingly toward revenge. I began to gather the materials I would need: gasoline, rags, lighters, slowly formulating a plan. I was consumed by my need for justice, for retribution. And so, on that fateful night, I put my plan into action. Watching the flames consume Brenda and James's house, I felt a grim satisfaction. It was only the beginning. The night Brenda confessed was a whirlwind of raw emotion. After following her and seeing her with James, I couldn't wait any longer. I needed answers, and I needed them now. She walked through the door, her face flushed from the evening's events. I was sitting on the couch, the room dimly lit, casting shadows that seemed to mirror the darkness consuming my thoughts. "Brenda," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "we need to talk." She froze, her eyes wide with surprise and fear. "What is it, John?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady but failing. The guilt was already visible on her face. "I know," I said simply, and the color drained from her cheeks. "I know about you and James." For a moment, she just stood there, silent and still, as if hoping she could will this nightmare away. Then the tears began to flow. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." "How long?" I demanded, my anger flaring. "How long has this been going on?" 6 months, she admitted, each word a fresh wound. "It started after that argument we had. I was feeling so alone, and James, he was there for me." Her excuses felt hollow, a flimsy shield against the reality of her betrayal. "So this is my fault?" I asked incredulously. "You betrayed me because of a fight?" "No, it's not just that," she pleaded. "I don't know when it happened, but I stopped loving you. I tried to fight it, but I couldn't." Her words struck me like a physical blow. The woman I had built my life around, the person I trusted above all others, had fallen out of love with me and into the arms of my best friend. The sheer magnitude of their betrayal was overwhelming. "What about James?" I asked, needing to understand the full extent of this treachery. "What does he feel?" "He loves me," she said softly, almost apologetically. "We're planning to be together." I felt a surge of rage so intense it left me trembling. "And what am I supposed to do?" I shouted, unable to contain the storm of emotions any longer. "What am I supposed to do with this?" She didn't have an answer. Her silence was all the confirmation I needed that my life as I knew it was over. The days following her confession were a blur of pain and confusion. Brenda moved out, going to stay with James, leaving me alone in a house filled with memories that now felt like cruel mockeries. Each room, each piece of furniture, seemed to taunt me with visions of the life I thought I had. But amidst the sorrow, a plan began to take shape. I couldn't let them walk away unscathed. They needed to feel the same sense of loss and devastation that they had inflicted on me. My thoughts turned dark, and I began to methodically prepare for my revenge. I spent hours gathering supplies, planning every detail. I bought gasoline in small, inconspicuous amounts, collected rags, and made sure the lighters I had were full and ready. Every step was deliberate, driven by a single burning purpose. The night I chose to act was cold and clear, the stars bright in the sky, indifferent to the human drama playing out below. I drove to James's house first, making sure they were both there. As I poured gasoline around the perimeter, my heart pounded, but my hands were steady. I lit the rags and threw them into the gasoline-soaked ground, watching as the flames leapt up, quickly engulfing the house. The sight of the fire was mesmerizing, a terrifyingly beautiful symbol of my rage and pain. I stood there for a moment, feeling a dark satisfaction before heading to my own house. There, I repeated the process, setting ablaze the place that had once been my home. As the flames consumed my past, I turned my back on it all and drove away, not looking back. I was leaving behind the ashes of my old life, stepping into an uncertain future with nothing but the clothes on my back and the weight of my actions on my conscience. In those burning ruins, I sought some form of closure, but as I fled the city, I realized that the real challenge lay ahead. I had exacted my revenge, but now I had to live with what I had done. Fleeing the scene, I felt a temporary hollow sense of victory. The flames had purged the physical remnants of my shattered life, but as the adrenaline subsided, I was left with a gnawing emptiness. I drove aimlessly through the night, my thoughts a chaotic whirl of anger, sorrow, and regret. I found a motel on the outskirts of a neighboring town and checked in under a fake name. The clerk didn't ask questions. I probably looked like just another weary traveler. In the quiet of the small, dingy room, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my reflection in the cracked mirror. The man who looked back at me was a stranger, hollow-eyed, unshaven, and haunted. The enormity of what I had done began to sink in. I had become an arsonist, a criminal. The houses I had set ablaze were not just structures. They were homes filled with memories, possessions, and pieces of our lives. My rage had driven me to destroy not only the symbols of betrayal, but also any chance of reconciliation or redemption. Sleep was elusive. I tossed and turned, haunted by images of the inferno I had created. Flames danced behind my eyelids, and I kept hearing Brenda's and James's voices, their screams mingling with the crackling fire. Morning brought no relief, only a heavy sense of dread about the future. I decided to move further away, needing distance from the scene of my crime. I drove for hours, crossing state lines, stopping only for gas and food. Each mile added a thin layer of separation between me and my past, but it did nothing to ease the turmoil inside. Eventually, I reached a small town where no one knew me. I rented a cheap apartment under another alias and started looking for work. The days blurred together as I took on odd jobs, doing anything to keep busy and avoid thinking about the past. I lived in a state of numbness, mechanically going through the motions of daily life. Despite my efforts to remain anonymous, the news eventually caught up with me. One evening, while grabbing a beer at a local bar, I saw a news report about the fires. The headlines were sensational. Mysterious arson destroys 2 homes in suburban neighborhood. Police were investigating, but so far there were no leads. I watched the screen, my heart pounding, feeling the noose tighten around my neck. The bartender noticed my pale face. "You okay, buddy?" he asked, concern in his voice. "Yeah, just a long day," I mumbled, forcing a weak smile. I quickly paid my tab and left, my mind racing. The walls were closing in, and paranoia began to set in. Every passerby seemed like a potential threat, every police car a harbinger of doom. The solitude of my apartment became both a refuge and a prison. I couldn't risk drawing attention to myself, so I spent most of my time indoors, consumed by my thoughts. The initial satisfaction of revenge had long since faded, replaced by a crushing sense of guilt and fear. I started having nightmares, vivid and relentless. In them, Brenda and James stood in the midst of flames, their eyes accusing, their faces twisted in agony. One particularly restless night, I found myself pacing the small living room, wrestling with my conscience. The faces of Brenda and James haunted me, their betrayal now overshadowed by the horror of my own actions. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. Something had to change, but I didn't know what. I decided to seek help, desperate for some semblance of peace. I found a therapist in the next town over, using yet another fake identity. In our sessions, I started to unpack the layers of anger, hurt, and guilt that had driven me to such extreme measures. It was a slow and painful process, but admitting my actions aloud was the first step towards any kind of healing. As weeks turned into months, I began to understand the depth of my rage and the reasons behind it. I also started to see that while Brenda and James had betrayed me, my response had been equally destructive. The path to forgiveness, of them and myself, was long and uncertain, but I was determined to find some way forward. Rebuilding my life from the ashes was a daunting task. Each day was a struggle to confront my past and find a way to live with it. The scars were deep, and the weight of my actions would always be with me, but I was learning to cope, one step at a time. The months following my decision to seek therapy were some of the hardest of my life. Every session was a grueling confrontation with the darkest parts of my soul. My therapist, Dr. Lewis, was a patient and understanding woman. She never judged, only guided me through the labyrinth of my emotions and actions. One particularly tough session, I broke down completely. "I destroyed everything," I sobbed. "How can I ever come back from this? How can I ever forgive myself?" Dr. Lewis leaned forward, her eyes kind but firm. "John, forgiveness is a process. It won't happen overnight. But acknowledging your actions and seeking to understand why you did what you did is the first step. You have to be willing to face the consequences and make amends, even if those you hurt never forgive you. Her words stuck with me. Making amends, facing consequences. It seemed impossible, but I knew it was something I had to do if I ever wanted to find peace. I began to take small steps. I reached out anonymously to the victims of my crime, Brenda, James, and the neighbors who were affected by the fires. I sent letters without a return address, explaining my actions without excusing them, expressing my deep remorse, and offering to make restitution in any way I could. I didn't expect forgiveness. I just needed them to know I was truly sorry. Meanwhile, I continued to build a new life. I found steadier work as a mechanic, a job that kept my hands busy and my mind occupied. My co-workers knew me as John, a quiet, hard-working man who kept to himself. The anonymity was a double-edged sword. I was safe from discovery, but it also meant I was constantly on guard, always hiding. As the seasons changed, I found solace in routine. The physical labor of my job was therapeutic, and I began to take pride in my work. Fixing cars was a tangible way to see progress and improvement, a stark contrast to the slow, painful process of emotional healing. One day, while working on an old pickup, a young woman named Lisa struck up a conversation. She was a regular customer, friendly and outgoing, with a laugh that seemed to fill the entire shop. Over time, our interactions became a bright spot in my otherwise solitary existence. She would bring coffee and pastries, and we'd chat about everything from the weather to the latest news. Despite my efforts to remain detached, I found myself looking forward to her visits. She had a way of making me feel human again, less like the monster I saw in the mirror each morning. Slowly, cautiously, I allowed myself to open up to her, sharing bits and pieces of my past. Carefully edited, of course, but honest enough to form a real connection. One evening, after closing up the shop, Lisa invited me to a small gathering at her place. It was a simple affair, just a few friends around a bonfire, but it was the first social event I had attended since my life fell apart. Sitting around the fire, listening to laughter and stories, I felt a warmth I hadn't experienced in a long time. For a few hours, I was just John, a man enjoying a night with friends. As the fire crackled and the night deepened, Lisa sat down next to me. "You know, you're a bit of a mystery, John," she said, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. "But I think there's a good man under all that sadness." Her words struck a chord. Was it possible that there was still goodness in me, despite everything I had done? I didn't know, but for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a path to redemption. I continued my therapy, delving deeper into the roots of my anger and pain. I began to understand how my unresolved issues had festered, turning me into someone I barely recognized. Dr. Lewis helped me develop healthier ways to cope with my emotions, and I started to see small but significant changes in myself. The letters I sent eventually yielded responses. Brenda wrote back first. Her letter was short but powerful. She expressed her anger and hurt, but also mentioned that she appreciated my apology. She didn't forgive me, but she acknowledged my effort to make amends. It was more than I had hoped for. James's response was harsher. He condemned my actions, and his words were filled with bitterness. But even in his anger, there was a sense of closure. He knew the depth of my remorse, and that was something. The neighbors I had indirectly affected were surprisingly kind. They accepted my anonymous offer to pay for the damages, and their forgiveness, while not necessary, was a balm to my wounded soul. As the first anniversary of the fire approached, I found myself reflecting on the year that had passed. It had been a journey through darkness, but I was beginning to see the light. I knew I had a long way to go, but I was on the path to becoming someone I could live with, someone who could perhaps one day be worthy of forgiveness. I stood on a hill overlooking the small town that had become my sanctuary. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over everything. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. My past was a part of me, but it didn't have to define my future. I had taken the first steps toward redemption, and that was enough for now. The road to forgiveness was longer and more treacherous than I could have imagined. Despite the progress I had made, the weight of my actions still hung heavy on my conscience. The letters I had sent were just the beginning. true redemption required more than words. With Dr. Lewis's guidance, I began exploring ways to contribute positively to the community, to balance the scales of justice in whatever small ways I could. I volunteered at a local food bank, helping distribute meals to families in need. The gratitude in their eyes touched something deep within me, reminding me of the importance of empathy and kindness. I also started attending support groups for individuals struggling with anger management and forgiveness. Sharing my story with others who were grappling with their own demons was humbling. It made me realize that forgiveness wasn't just about seeking it from others, it was about forgiving myself too. One day, as I was leaving a group session, a woman approached me tentatively. She introduced herself as Emma, a neighbor who had lost her home in the fire. My heart sank, but Emma surprised me with a warm smile. "Thank you for trying to make things right," she said softly. "It means a lot to us." Her words were like a lifeline. For the first time, I dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, redemption was possible. I began meeting with Emma regularly, helping her navigate the bureaucratic maze of insurance claims and rebuilding efforts. Our conversations were healing for both of us, a mutual exchange of understanding and forgiveness. Meanwhile, my relationship with Lisa deepened. She had become my anchor, a beacon of light in the darkness of my past. With her unwavering support, I found the courage to confront my deepest fears and insecurities. She accepted me for who I was, scars and all, and her love gave me strength to continue on the difficult path I had chosen. One evening, over dinner at her place, Lisa broached a subject that had been weighing on her mind. "John," she began gently, "have you thought about facing Brenda and James in person?" The suggestion sent a chill down my spine. Confronting them face to face seemed like an insurmountable challenge, a test of my newfound resolve. But Lisa's words echoed Dr. Lewis's advice. True healing required facing the consequences of my actions, no matter how difficult. After much soul-searching and countless sleepless nights, I made a decision. I would write to Brenda and James again, this time offering to meet them in person. I needed to see their faces, to hear their voices, and to confront the reality of what I had done. The letters were carefully worded, expressing my desire for closure and my willingness to listen to whatever they had to say. I didn't expect them to forgive me, but I hoped they would understand that I was genuinely remorseful and committed to making amends. Days passed in agonizing anticipation until finally, Brenda responded. Her letter was terse but surprisingly open to the idea of a meeting. She suggested a neutral location, a coffee shop in a nearby town, where we could talk privately. The day of the meeting arrived, and I found myself sitting nervously in the corner of the coffee shop. My hands trembled as I waited for Brenda to arrive. When she walked through the door, my heart skipped a beat. We exchanged awkward greetings, the tension palpable between us. But as we started talking, something shifted. Brenda shared her pain, her anger, and her confusion. She asked me questions, hard questions that I struggled to answer. But through it all, I listened. I listened to her side of the story, to the devastation my actions had caused her. And then, unexpectedly, she asked me about my journey since the fires. I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. But as I spoke about therapy, about volunteering, about the steps I had taken toward redemption, I saw a flicker of something in Brenda's eyes. Perhaps understanding, perhaps even a glimmer of forgiveness. The meeting with James was harder. He met me with cold eyes and a stony silence. He didn't want to hear my explanations or apologies. His anger was raw and justified, and I had to accept that my actions had irreparably damaged our friendship. But in facing them both, in confronting the pain I had caused, I found a measure of peace. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but it was closure. It was a chance to take responsibility for my actions and to acknowledge the human cost of my rage. After the meetings, I returned to Lisa's apartment, emotionally drained but strangely relieved. She held me as I cried, comforting me with her presence and her unwavering support. "You did the right thing," she whispered, brushing a tear from my cheek. "It's a step forward, John." And she was right. Each step forward was a victory over the darkness that had consumed me, a victory toward the light of forgiveness and redemption. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I was no longer walking it alone. The journey toward forgiveness had been long and arduous, marked by moments of despair and small victories. As I continued therapy with Dr. Lewis and deepened my relationships with Lisa and Emma, I began to realize that forgiveness was not just a destination, but a continuous process of healing and growth. Dr. Lewis encouraged me to explore forgiveness from within, to forgive myself for the mistakes I had made and the pain I had caused. It was a daunting task, confronting the shame and guilt that had plagued me for so long. But with her guidance, I started to understand that self-forgiveness was essential for my own well-being and for the possibility of genuine reconciliation with others. Lisa remained my steadfast companion through it all. She listened without judgment, offering comfort and reassurance when the weight of my past threatened to overwhelm me. Her belief in my capacity to change gave me the strength to keep moving forward, even when the road seemed impassable. One day, as I sat with Lisa on a quiet afternoon in her apartment, she asked a question that caught me off guard. "John, do you think you can forgive Brenda and James?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Forgiving Brenda and James seemed inconceivable at first. How could I forgive the people who had shattered my world? But as I reflected on my journey, the therapy, the letters, the meetings, I realized that forgiveness was not about excusing their actions or forgetting the pain. It was about freeing myself from the grip of anger and resentment, about reclaiming my own sense of peace and happiness. With a deep breath, I nodded slowly. "I think I can," I said quietly, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "I think I'm ready to let go of the hatred and the hurt." Lisa smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "I knew you could," she said softly, reaching out to squeeze my hand. Encouraged by Lisa's support, I decided to write to Brenda and James again, this time with a different purpose. I poured my heart into the letters, expressing my newfound understanding and my willingness to forgive. I acknowledged the pain they had caused me, but emphasized my desire to move forward with compassion and healing. The responses were mixed. Brenda wrote back first, her letter filled with relief and gratitude. She admitted her own guilt and remorse, acknowledging the damage she had caused. She thanked me for my forgiveness and expressed a tentative hope for a future where we could both find peace. James's response was more guarded, his words cautious and measured. He accepted my forgiveness but made it clear that rebuilding our friendship would take time, if it was even possible. His honesty was painful but necessary, a reminder that forgiveness was a journey that required patience and understanding. As time passed, I continued to work on myself, attending therapy, volunteering in the community, and nurturing my relationships with Lisa and Emma. Each day brought new challenges and opportunities for growth, and I embraced them with a renewed sense of purpose. One evening, as I sat alone on the hill overlooking the town, watching the sun set behind the distant mountains, I felt a profound sense of peace. The weight of my past no longer dragged me down. Instead, it propelled me forward toward a future filled with hope and possibility. Forgiveness, I realized, was not just about letting go of resentment. It was about reclaiming my power to shape my own narrative, to define myself not by the mistakes of the past, but by the courage and resilience I had discovered within myself. I thought of Brenda and James, hoping that they too would find their own paths to healing and forgiveness. Our lives were forever intertwined by the events that had unfolded, but I was no longer consumed by bitterness or regret. I had found peace, and in that peace, I found the strength to forgive and to be forgiven. As I descended the hill and walked back toward town, I knew that my journey was far from over. But I also knew that I was no longer walking alone. With each step, I embraced the promise of a future shaped by compassion, forgiveness, and the unwavering belief that redemption was possible for us all. The 8th chapter of my journey was not just about forgiveness. It was about embracing a new beginning, a chance to rebuild and redefine my life on my own terms. With Brenda and James, the process of forgiveness was ongoing. Our interactions were cautious but civil. We met occasionally for coffee or exchanged emails, gradually rebuilding a semblance of trust and mutual respect. It was not the same as before, nor could it ever be, but it was progress. We had all grown, changed by our shared experiences in ways we could never have predicted. Lisa remained by my side through it all. Our relationship deepened into something beautiful and profound, a partnership built on trust, honesty, and a shared commitment to supporting each other's growth. She became my confidant, my rock, and my greatest source of joy. Together, Lisa and I embarked on new adventures. We traveled to places I had only dreamed of, experiencing the world with fresh eyes and open hearts. Each journey brought us closer together, strengthening our bond and reaffirming our belief in the possibility of second chances. Professionally, I continued to excel in my career as a mechanic. The shop where I worked became a second home, filled with camaraderie and a sense of purpose. I took pride in my work, knowing that each car I repaired was a testament to my commitment to craftsmanship and integrity. In the community, I became more involved, volunteering not just at the food bank, but also mentoring young adults who were struggling with anger and forgiveness. Sharing my story with them was both humbling and empowering, a reminder that our past mistakes did not define us, but could instead inspire others to seek healing and redemption. As the years passed, I found myself reflecting more on the lessons I had learned, the importance of empathy, the power of forgiveness, and the resilience of the human spirit. I realized that my journey had not been just about atoning for my past, but also about discovering my true self and embracing the possibility of a future filled with hope and compassion. Occasionally, I would receive a letter or an email from Brenda or James, updating me on their lives. They had both moved on, finding happiness in new relationships and careers. Our conversations were cordial but distant, a reflection of the scars that still lingered beneath the surface. Yet, there was a mutual understanding, a silent acknowledgement that we had all grown and changed, and that our paths had diverged in unexpected ways. One summer afternoon, as Lisa and I strolled through a local park hand in hand, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life we had built together. The sun dappled through the trees, casting playful shadows on the path ahead. Children laughed and played nearby, their joyful shouts echoing through the air. "John," Lisa said suddenly, breaking the peaceful silence between us, "do you ever regret what happened? The fires, I mean." I stopped in my tracks, considering her question carefully. "I regret the pain I caused," I replied honestly. "But I don't regret the journey it set me on. It led me to you, to a deeper understanding of myself and others." Lisa smiled warmly, squeezing my hand gently. "I'm glad," she said softly, "because I wouldn't change a thing about where we are right now." Her words filled me with a profound sense of peace. The road to forgiveness had been rocky and uncertain, marked by moments of darkness and doubt. But in the end, it had led me here, to a place of healing, love, and the promise of a future filled with infinite possibilities. As we continued our walk, I felt a renewed sense of hope and optimism. The past was behind me, a distant memory that no longer held power over my present or my future. I'd emerged stronger and wiser, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead with an open heart and a steadfast determination to live each day with purpose and gratitude. The journey toward forgiveness had been my greatest challenge and my most profound triumph. And as I looked ahead, hand in hand with Lisa, I knew that the best was yet to come. As I approached the 9th chapter of my journey, I found myself reflecting deeply on the twists and turns that had led me to this point. It was a time of introspection, gratitude, and a renewed appreciation for the preciousness of life. Since embracing forgiveness and moving forward with Lisa by my side, I had come to cherish the simple joys of everyday moments. Our life together was filled with laughter, love, and a sense of peace that I had once thought impossible to attain. Lisa and I continued to explore new adventures, both near and far. We traveled to breathtaking landscapes, immersed ourselves in different cultures, and savored the flavors of exotic cuisines. Each experience deepened our bond and reinforced the resilience of the human spirit. Professionally, my career as a mechanic thrived. I took on more responsibilities at the shop, mentoring younger employees, and sharing my knowledge with enthusiasm. The satisfaction of fixing engines and restoring vehicles became a metaphor for my own journey of repair and renewal. In the community, I remained active, volunteering regularly and participating in local events. I spoke at schools and community centers, sharing my story of redemption and resilience. The reception was always humbling, as people listened intently, seeking hope and inspiration in my words. Occasionally, I would receive updates from Brenda and James. They had both moved forward with their lives, finding happiness and fulfillment in new endeavors. Our communications were cordial, marked by a mutual respect for the paths we had chosen. One autumn evening, As Lisa and I sat on the porch of our cozy home, sipping hot cocoa and watching the leaves turn golden. She turned to me with a gentle smile. "John," she said softly, "do you ever think about what might have been if none of this had happened?" I took a moment to ponder her question, gazing at the starlit sky above us. "Sometimes," I admitted quietly. "But I believe everything happens for a reason. Our journey, with all its ups and downs, led us to each other and to this moment." Lisa nodded thoughtfully, her eyes shimmering with affection. "I'm grateful for every twist and turn," she replied, squeezing my hand affectionately. "Because they brought us here, together." Her words resonated deeply within me. The road to forgiveness had been fraught with challenges and uncertainties, but it had also been a path of profound growth and transformation. I had learned to forgive others and, most importantly, to forgive myself. In doing so, I had discovered the true meaning of redemption, a journey of healing, acceptance, and the embrace of life's infinite possibilities. As I looked at Lisa, bathed in the soft glow of the porch light, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Gratitude for her unwavering love and support, for the second chances I had been given, and for the chance to live a life filled with purpose and meaning. The 9th chapter of my journey was not just an ending, but a beginning, a celebration of resilience, forgiveness, and the boundless capacity of the human heart to heal and to love. As we sat together under the canopy of stars, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, hand in hand, with gratitude and hope lighting our way. The 10th chapter of my journey was a testament to closure and continuation, a reflection on how far I had come and the path that still stretched ahead, filled with new beginnings and possibilities. With Lisa by my side, our life together had blossomed into a tapestry of shared dreams and aspirations. We continued to explore the world, savoring each moment and cherishing the simple joys of everyday life. Our bond grew stronger with each passing day, anchored in mutual respect, trust, and unwavering support. Professionally, my career as a mechanic flourished. I took on more challenging projects, honing my skills and pushing the boundaries of my expertise. The shop where I worked became a place of camaraderie and growth, a testament to the power of perseverance and dedication. In the community, I remained active, volunteering my time and expertise to help those in need. Whether it was mentoring young adults or assisting families affected by adversity, I found fulfillment in giving back and making a positive impact. Reflecting on my journey of forgiveness, I realized that closure was not a destination, but a continuous process of healing and growth. I maintained occasional contact with Brenda and James, their lives moving forward in separate but interconnected paths. Our interactions were marked by mutual respect and understanding, a testament to the power of forgiveness and the resilience of the human spirit. One spring morning, as Lisa and I walked hand in hand through a blooming garden, she turned to me with a smile. "John," she said softly, "do you ever think about what lies ahead for us?" I squeezed her hand affectionately, gazing into her eyes filled with love and hope. "I do," I replied sincerely, "and I know that whatever challenges or joys come our way, we'll face them together." As we continued our stroll through the garden, surrounded by the vibrant colors of nature and the promise of new beginnings, I felt a profound sense of peace and gratitude. The 10th chapter of my journey was not just an ending, but a continuation, a celebration of resilience, forgiveness, and the boundless possibilities that lay ahead. In embracing closure and continuation, I had learned invaluable lessons about forgiveness, compassion, and the transformative power of love. Each step of my journey had shaped me into the person I was becoming, a person capable of embracing life's uncertainties with courage and grace. As we returned home hand in hand, I knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges and triumphs, laughter and tears. But with Lisa's love and support, and with the lessons of forgiveness and resilience guiding me, I was ready to face the future with an open heart and a steadfast determination to live each day to the fullest. The 10th chapter was not just an end, but a new beginning, a testament to the enduring power of forgiveness and the infinite possibilities that awaited us on the journey ahead. The 11th chapter of my journey marked a poignant epilogue, a reflection on the lessons learned, the growth achieved, and the enduring power of forgiveness and redemption. Life with Lisa had continued to unfold with grace and gratitude. Our love deepened with each passing year, anchored in mutual respect, understanding, and unwavering support. Together, we navigated the highs and lows of life, celebrating victories and facing challenges hand in hand. Professionally, I had expanded my skills as a mechanic, taking on leadership roles within the shop and mentoring younger colleagues. The satisfaction of mastering my craft and contributing to the success of the business filled me with pride and a sense of purpose. In the community, I remained committed to volunteer work, particularly in mentoring programs and initiatives aimed at supporting individuals on their journey to healing and forgiveness. Sharing my story became a way to inspire hope and resilience in others, encouraging them to embrace the power of second chances. Reflecting on my journey of forgiveness, I realized that closure was not a one-time event, but a continuous process of growth and renewal. My interactions with Brenda and James had evolved into a cordial understanding, marked by mutual respect and acknowledgement of our shared past. Occasionally, I would receive updates from Brenda and James, their lives continuing to unfold in ways that reflected their resilience and capacity for growth. Our communications were reminders of the transformative power of forgiveness and the possibility of healing wounds that once seemed insurmountable. One summer afternoon, as Lisa and I sat together on the porch of our home, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she turned to me with a smile. "John," she said softly, "do you ever think about how far we've come?" I took her hand in mine, squeezing it gently as I looked into her eyes filled with love and warmth. "Every day," I replied sincerely, "and I'm grateful for every step of the journey that led us here." As we sat in companionable silence, the echoes of our past struggles and triumphs seemed distant yet ever present, reminders of the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of forgiveness. In embracing the 11th chapter, I found peace and fulfillment in knowing that forgiveness was not just about letting go of the past, but also about embracing the possibilities of the future. Each day was a testament to the transformative power of love, forgiveness, and the resilience of the human heart. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky above us, casting a soft glow over our peaceful corner of the world, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The 11th chapter was not just an epilogue, but a celebration of life's infinite possibilities and the enduring power of forgiveness to heal and transform. Together, hand in hand, Lisa and I embraced the promise of a future filled with hope, gratitude, and the unwavering belief that every ending was also a new beginning, an opportunity to write the next chapter of our journey with courage, compassion, and an open heart. Watching the flames devour their home brought me satisfaction. It was an act of cleansing and liberation. As the fire flickered and danced in the night, I felt a strange mix of relief and vindication. Every crackle of burning timber echoed my inner turmoil, and with each engulfing blaze, I shed a layer of the weight that had burdened me for so long. It wasn't just their physical belongings that turned to ash. It was also the remnants of betrayal and pain that I sought to purge. After the flames had already begun to consume their dwelling, I returned home and set our house ablaze. The fire spread quickly, consuming everything in its path, transforming my memories into dust and ashes. I couldn't bear to live in a place steeped in so much deceit and anguish anymore. As the last flicker illuminated the corners of our once shared sanctuary, doubt crept in about whether this revenge was truly what I needed. Following this, I fled the city, leaving everything behind. My new life began amidst the ruins of the old. I ventured into the unknown, uncertain if this was a fresh start or merely another futile attempt. Now, several months later, I find myself reflecting on what I've done. The nightmarish events of betrayal and revenge still haunt my thoughts, casting a shadow over everything I once held dear. The satisfaction I briefly felt watching their homes engulfed in flames has given way to a profound sense of emptiness and regret. The fire that ravaged their lives was meant to be my redemption, a purging of the pain and deceit that tore apart my world. Yet as I stand amidst the ashes of my own home, I realize I've lost more than I've gained. The destruction I wrought was not just physical, but emotional, leaving scars that may never heal. Returning to the ruins of what was once our sanctuary, I am filled with a deep sense of sorrow and disbelief. How did it come to this? How did love turn into such consuming hatred? These questions plague my mind as I sift through the charred remnants of our past life together. My escape from the city was not an escape from myself. The weight of my actions hangs heavy on my conscience, a constant reminder of the darkness that resides within me. I carry the burden of my decisions wherever I go, knowing that I can never truly outrun the consequences. Now, as I look back on the path of destruction I've left behind, I realize that revenge has only brought me more pain. The flames that once seemed to offer solace now flicker with accusation, condemning me for my descent into madness. In the quiet solitude of my new life, far from the chaos I've unleashed, I begin to grasp the magnitude of my actions. The road to forgiveness, both from others and from myself, seems daunting and uncertain. But I know that it starts with accepting responsibility for the devastation I've caused. As I continue to rebuild, not just physical structures, but also the shattered pieces of my soul, I hold on to a fragile hope that someday I will find peace. Perhaps then, amidst the wreckage of my past, I can learn to forgive, not just others, but most importantly, myself.